do we respond to all these different complicated issues? And what do we need, again, as this moral ecology and framework to be able to think through these? Because that becomes the lowest common denominator for almost everyone.
I have been criticized because in 2020, 2016, and in 2024, I will argue that there will be faithful Christians that are voting differently than you might, whoever you are.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is I'd say you can be wrong politically and faithful. It is I find this interesting, and I'm still sort of like wrestling with this, and I could very well be wrong here, but I find that culturally we have a much easier time telling people that they're evil than just saying that they're wrong. I find that to be like very, very interesting. The third thing I'd say is I think the way to respond, in my view, I'm pro-life. I think that I think that human beings are made in the image of God. That includes the unborn child. I think the way to not sort of respond to this sort of question is to downplay the issue, or to say, to sort of turn the volume down on the seriousness of the issue. I think it's a very serious issue. What I will say is, and then actually let me make one more point before I think it's a fine. I think it is a justifiable issue for someone to say, my life experience, the passions that God has laid on my heart, I prioritize abortion in my vote. I think that's a fine thing for people to say. I want people to be praying about their political priorities. I want people to be consulting with other Christians. I want people to be attentive to the needs of their community. But if all of this is done in earnest, and an individual's assessment is this issue, because of the state of things, because of what might be able to be done, what might not get done, I'm prioritizing this issue. I think it's important not to say, because you prioritize it, I ignore everything else. I think it's important to hold tension there. So I think it's one thing to say, look, I think abortion decides my vote, or abortion factors heavily into my vote. But I do that not in the absence of discernment, but that is itself an act of discernment. In other words, it does require moral energy, because I am making sure that even as I prioritize the issue of abortion, I know that our politics is contingent and prudential, and it affects a whole range of issues. So I am doing the best I can to sort of add these things up and determine my vote. So all of those things exist. On the issue of abortion specifically, I just want to. It is very possible, and there's very good evidence to suggest that Dobbs, which is the ruling that overturned Roe, which has been the North Star of the pro-life movement, that Dobbs and its aftermath could result in the. I think there's evidence already that this is what the short-term aftermath has been, but I think I'm also concerned about the medium term and the long term, that Dobbs could result in more abortions than existed before Dobbs. If that is even within the realm of possibility, doesn't there have to be some reflection among those who for decades told Christians ending Roe is the only thing you can vote on. It's the only thing that matters. If there's an election between someone who opposes Roe and someone who supports it, your decision is made for you. If there's even a chance a post-Roe world is less conducive to human life and to unborn children than a pre-Roe world, isn't it? That should be provoking a crisis. And the abortion data that we have shows abortion spiking in the first year post Dobbs. I think it is likely that in the next 3 to 10 years we end up with a more liberal federally speaking. We already see this in states like New York, California, Massachusetts, but federally speaking, we end up with a more liberal abortion regime post-Roe than we had, legal regime post-Roe than we had before Roe. And so I want to be absolutely clear. What I'm not saying is, well, abortion is going to happen anyways. You can't do anything about it. What I am saying is exactly what I said in our more theoretical discussion, which is we need to be really careful about equating these ultimate principles to particular policy instruments and political strategies. Because if you're going to use the authority of God to sort of baptize your prudential political opinions, and your prudential political opinions don't pan out quite the way that you thought they would have to, not only is that causing harm to our politics and our culture. So you look at public surveys, those who identify as pro-choice all-time high. So culturally speaking, the American people think abortion is more necessary now than they ever have before. So the cultural sort of fight is not in a good place. And sure, we could have arguments. Well, a step back was necessary to take 2 steps forward. Oh, okay, but are we clear on the prudentiality of all this? Are we clear on the fact that you don't quite exactly know how your strategies are going to pan out? And then maybe we should not wield our political opinions as though they have the force of weight of deciding who's faithful and who's not, and what's God's will and what's not. We need to wield that very, very gently.